What if I told you that the greatest revenge against a narcissist is success they cannot steal, control, or even understand? What if the chains they wrapped around you could be melted down and forged into the sword that sets you free? A narcissist feeds on your emotions the way a parasite feeds on its host. They cannot exist in emotional isolation. Your reactions are the oxygen that keeps their inflated ego alive. Whether it is your anger, your tears, your joy, or your anxiety, as long as it is about them, they win. Understand this. To a narcissist, your outrage is applause, your pain is praise, your attention, no matter how bitter, is affirmation. And so, to torture a narcissist, you must become the one thing they cannot understand: indifferent. Indifference is not cruelty, it is power reclaimed. It is the conscious withdrawal of your emotional investment. It is the refusal to dance in their theater of drama. When a narcissist insults you, they are not seeking truth, they are baiting a reaction. When they withhold affection, they are not expressing hurt. They are trying to control your craving for love. And when you remain unmoved, unbothered, and unapologetically focused on your own path, they feel a powerlessness that enrages them to the core. Imagine this: a narcissist sends a passive-aggressive message meant to sting. Perhaps it's a subtle dig at your appearance, a sarcastic jab at your dreams, or a smug dismissal of your accomplishments. The old version of you might have fired back with fury, desperate to defend your worth. But this time, you do nothing. No reply, no retaliation, not even a raised eyebrow. You go about your day as if their words were raindrops on steel, heard but never absorbed. And that silence, it screams at them, because for the first time, they do not control your state of mind. They do not dictate your mood. They do not own the narrative. You have robbed them of the pleasure of your reaction, and in doing so, you have taken away the only currency they value. Indifference is not a lack of awareness. It is deep awareness expressed through discipline. You see their games, you hear their manipulation, but you no longer give it life. Like a flame denied oxygen, their antics begin to flicker and fade. They spiral, desperate to provoke a spark that no longer ignites. Because when you are indifferent, they cease to exist as the center of your universe. And that, to a narcissist, is a fate worse than being hated. A narcissist survives by shrinking your world to fit within the confines of their control. They craft a reality where you are small and they are grand, where your purpose is to orbit their ego like a satellite clinging to borrowed light. Their reality is a trap, an illusion built on manipulation, gaslighting, and dominance. To torture a narcissist, you must do the unthinkable in their eyes. Outgrow the reality they designed for you. You must stretch beyond the limitations they placed on your thoughts, your confidence, your ambitions, and step into a version of yourself they cannot contain, predict, or follow. Outgrowing their reality means no longer accepting their version of who you are. It means recognizing that the criticisms they hurled at you, too emotional, not enough, never going to make it, were never truth, only tools to keep you from awakening. They needed you to stay doubtful, uncertain, dependent on their approval. Because the moment you begin to see your own power, you become uncontrollable. You become unreachable by their manipulation. Picture this: you once worked under a narcissistic boss. Every time you had an idea, it was dismissed. Every time you succeeded, the credit was stolen. They told you that you were lucky to have the job, that no one else would hire someone like you. You began to question your worth, thinking perhaps they were right. But one day you decide to test the edges of their reality. You begin to study outside work hours. You grow your skills. You build a network. You apply for a better role elsewhere, quietly, steadily, without seeking permission. And when the offer comes, you don't ask for validation. You hand in your resignation with calm confidence. Suddenly, their carefully constructed illusion crumbles. You were never small. You were only being held in a small space. Now, as you rise into a higher level of living, earning more, doing more, being more, they are left behind, fuming in the ruins of their collapsing kingdom. The prison they built for you no longer has walls strong enough to contain your expansion, and that is torture to someone whose power only worked when you believed in your own weakness. To outgrow a narcissist's reality is to disprove everything they said about you by the sheer force of your evolution. It is not about revenge. It is about refusing to live beneath the ceiling they set. While they remain stuck, spinning in circles of control, you build new dimensions of growth, meaning, and success they cannot comprehend, let alone reach. Their greatest fear is not your anger, it is your transformation. Because in your transformation, they are exposed as the fraud they always were. There is a kind of silence that is louder than thunder, calm, deliberate, and devastating to the narcissist. While they thrive in noise, chaos, and reaction, silence is the mirror that forces them to confront themselves without distraction. Narcissists depend on your emotional responses to validate their power. They provoke, prod, and push until you explode, because in your outburst, they see control. But when you master the art of silence, you deny them the very fuel they rely on. You become unreadable, untouchable, unshakable, and that infuriates them more than any insult ever could. To master silence is not to become passive. It is to become strategic. It means knowing that not every battle requires your sword. It means choosing your peace over their provocation. The narcissist sends you a cruel message, hoping you'll fire back and validate their importance in your life. Instead, you respond with nothing, not out of fear, but because you recognize the power of restraint. Silence becomes your boundary. It communicates, I owe you nothing, not my time, not my pain, not even my words. Imagine you're in a toxic relationship with a narcissistic partner. One evening, they ignite a familiar argument, a fabricated accusation, a twisted version of reality, a desperate attempt to bait your emotions. They want the shouting, the crying, the storm of energy that proves they still control the climate of your soul. But this time, you don't engage. You listen, then walk away. No sarcasm, no justification, no need to explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. That silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It tells them everything they need to know. Their tactics no longer work here. And then comes the discomfort. They try harder, the volume goes up, the insults more personal, but still you remain composed. You do not defend yourself in their courtroom. You don't let them cast you as the villain in their script. You leave the performance unfinished. And in that moment, the narcissist feels a loss they cannot explain. They are confronted with the reality that they no longer hold emotional real estate in your mind. Silence in this context is a withdrawal of power from a corrupt regime. It is the quiet revolution that turns their fortress of control into an echo chamber of their own insecurity. Mastering silence is not suppression. It is elevation. It is the realization that words are precious and your peace is priceless. Narcissists seek to rattle your stability, but when your silence is unshaken, you reveal their chaos. When they attack and you do not flinch, you reflect their irrelevance. The noise they make no longer reaches the heights you've climbed, and in that stillness, they are forced to face the one person they cannot manipulate, themselves. A narcissist does not respect your boundaries because they do not believe you have the right to them. In their world, your time belongs to them, your emotions exist to serve them, and your identity must bend to their expectations. That's why one of the most painful and powerful things you can do, the act that wounds them deeper than any confrontation, is to draw boundaries that are not just spoken, but enforced like a fortress with locked gates and stone walls. A narcissist cannot function where control is denied, and boundaries, real boundaries, are a declaration that you will no longer be conquered. Drawing boundaries isn't about making demands or shouting ultimatums. It's about consistency, clarity, and consequence. The narcissist will test every line you draw. They'll guilt you. They'll mock you. They'll push and prod with subtle manipulations to see if you'll fold. They thrive on seeing you hesitate. But when your no becomes immovable, when your emotional doors no longer swing open at their command, the dynamic shifts. You are no longer the emotional servant. They become the beggar locked outside your peace. Consider this example: a narcissistic parent who insists on controlling every detail of your adult life, your career, your relationships, even your daily decisions. Every time you try to assert your independence, they respond with emotional blackmail. After all I've done for you, you're so ungrateful. You think you're better than your own family. It's the language of guilt, weaponized to keep you submissive. But one day, you change the rules. You stop answering every call. You no longer feel obligated to explain yourself. You let them know, calmly, firmly, that your life is your own, and that you will not tolerate disrespect or manipulation. Then, most importantly, you follow through. The narcissist will react. They will attempt to breach the wall with dramatics, charm, or rage, but the fortress holds. You no longer allow them to raise their voice without ending the conversation. You no longer feel compelled to respond to their manufactured emergencies. You do not accept their intrusions under the mask of concern. And over time, they come to see what they never believed could be true. You are no longer accessible by their dysfunction. True boundaries are not temporary fences. They are a lifestyle. They are the recognition that your energy, your space, your emotional well-being is not public property. The narcissist once roamed freely through the garden of your life, trampling everything in sight. But now, with gates drawn high and guards in place, they are forced to stand outside, powerless, confronted with the truth that your worth is no longer subject to their approval or permission. To a narcissist, your happiness is only acceptable when it revolves around them. Your success must include their name. Your joy must seek their validation. If you dare to celebrate without their involvement, it shatters the illusion that they are the axis of your world. That's why one of the deepest forms of psychological torture to a narcissist is not revenge, not confrontation, but simple, unapologetic celebration in their absence. When you rise without notifying them, when you thrive without inviting them, when you glow without seeking their gaze, you deny them the fantasy that they are essential to your fulfillment. A narcissist believes they are the sun in your sky. Even if they belittle your goals, sabotage your plans, or withhold support, they still believe that any success you achieve is somehow due to their influence, or should at least be credited to them. They want to be the unspoken center of your joy. So when you remove them from that narrative, when you celebrate without their shadow looming over your light, it crushes their inflated self-importance. Imagine a narcissistic ex-partner who constantly told you that you were average, that your dreams were childish, that you'd never amount to anything without their guidance. They mocked your ambitions and rolled their eyes at your efforts. But after the relationship ends, you begin to rebuild. Slowly, steadily, you find your footing. You launch that business, get that promotion, move into the space they said you could never afford. You begin to laugh again, freely, loudly, authentically. You post your milestones, not with arrogance, but with peace. You share moments of joy with people who celebrate you genuinely, and all the while you say nothing to them. You send no message. You make no announcement. Your life becomes a celebration in which their presence is neither missed nor mentioned. And that, to a narcissist, is unbearable, because what they crave more than anything is to feel irreplaceable. Your joy without them is a mirror that reflects just how irrelevant they've become. They watch from afar. through whispers, through social media, through mutual acquaintances, and see a version of you that is flourishing not because of them, but in spite of them. That realization, that cold and brutal truth, wounds their ego deeper than any insult ever could. Celebrating without a narcissist is not about flaunting. It's about healing. It's about reclaiming the parts of your life that they tried to own. They once made you feel guilty for being happy. They acted wounded when your attention shifted toward anything not about them. But now you laugh louder, walk taller, shine brighter, and none of it is for them. Your joy no longer asks for their permission. Your celebration is sacred, and their absence from it is not a punishment. It's a boundary they chose. A narcissist is not spontaneous. They are strategic. Every insult, every guilt trip, every passive-aggressive comment is part of a game, a psychological performance carefully choreographed to pull you into a role they've assigned you. The apologizer, the justifier, the one who must constantly defend their worth. They want you entangled in their drama because the more you react, the more power they gain. But there is a way to win without engaging, to expose the game without lifting a finger, by refusing to play it. The moment you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop dancing to their manipulative rhythm, you become a mirror they can no longer control. Narcissists thrive in circular arguments where logic is irrelevant and emotion is ammunition. They will bait you with outrageous claims, distort your words, deny reality, then act wounded when you call them out. Their goal is not resolution, it's domination. They want you so emotionally exhausted and confused that you question your own sanity. But the moment you recognize the script, you realize the most powerful move is not to rewrite your lines, it's to walk off the stage entirely. Imagine dealing with a narcissistic coworker who constantly tries to undermine you in meetings. They interrupt, take credit for your work, make backhanded compliments like, "Wow, I didn't expect you to pull that off." They want you to snap, to lash out, to look unprofessional so they can play the victim and reinforce their narrative. But instead of taking the bait, you remain calm. You document your work. You let your results speak louder than any accusation. And when they throw their subtle jabs, you respond with silence, or better yet, with a smile that tells them nothing. You do not correct them. You do not argue. You rise above it, and by doing so, you remove their ability to drag you into a performance you never auditioned for. This disarms them because the narcissist has no power without your participation. Their manipulative tactics only work when you allow them to, and when you refuse to respond on cue, they're left fumbling, exposed, trying to act out a scene that no longer makes sense without your cooperation. Others begin to notice the inconsistency, the way they provoke without cause, the way they spin stories that don't align with reality. In your refusal to play, you hold up a mirror that reflects who they really are. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more than being seen without their mask. To refuse the game is to reclaim your peace. It's to understand that not every comment deserves a reply. Not every accusation deserves a defense. It's choosing to live on higher ground while they flail in the mud, desperate for a tug of war that you simply won't join. Without your energy to feed on, without your emotions to manipulate, their entire strategy collapses in on itself. Because a narcissist without control is a narcissist exposed, vulnerable, and unable to maintain the illusion they worked so hard to create. Now you understand, torturing a narcissist does not require confrontation, cruelty, or revenge. It requires evolution. It demands discipline, silence, and the unshakable decision to no longer be their emotional supply. When you become indifferent, when you outgrow their reality, when you build boundaries like fortresses and celebrate in their absence, you strip away their illusion of control. You stop playing their game, and that is the most unbearable punishment of all. A narcissist cannot survive where they are not worshipped, and when you rise above them, not with noise but with quiet power, you force them to face what they fear most: irrelevance. You do not defeat them with anger. You defeat them with detachment. You do not destroy them with words. You destroy them with your absence from their stage. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming free. So walk away, not to escape, but to rise. Let your silence echo louder than their chaos. Let your growth cast a shadow too vast for their ego to penetrate. And above all, remember, the best way to torture a narcissist is to become everything they told you you'd never be without them.